So you just reported earnings, and as we know, the pandemic has delivered a titanic hit to the live in-person events business, and your business is called Eventbrite. I know you quickly pivoted to online events, but what does the business actually look like right now?
Thanks, Emily. Thanks so much for having me on. And I would be lying if I said that the last 2 months haven't been extraordinarily difficult. So many businesses have been hit by COVID, and the live events industry is really one of the first hit and one of the most severely hit. So our focus has been around enabling our creators to continue running their businesses. Many people don't know that our creators are professional, they're small businesses, they're entrepreneurial. So as they're finding ways to connect with their communities, we're following behind and strengthening our platform and giving them an extended reach to new consumers. One of the interesting things about online events is that, without that barrier of geographic constraint, there's been some really interesting growth happening on the platform. And as far as in-person events, when it's safe to gather again, we will be there to help our creators rebuild their in-person live events. But honestly, it's not up to us to predict, it's up to us to prepare. And so that's what we're doing.
So you're seeing this 2,000% increase in online events, but how much can that make up for the decimation of in-person events?
Well, what's interesting is that we've seen about 10,000 frequent creators who were on the platform in 2019 publish online events in just April alone. And we transacted over 8 million free and paid tickets. So there's definitely a heartbeat there. There's a voracious appetite by consumers to want to connect around things that they care about, whether it's cooking or yoga or music. These are ways in which communities can come together and congregate and support one another. And so it's not so much about whether or not online events can save the live events industry. It's really about how communities can continue to have that connection until we can meet again in person.
And I know we're all desperate for those connections as we go, on into month 3 of this. You did lay off 45% of your staff. I know you took a pay cut. Shares have been down over 50% in the last 3 months. I imagine that this has been a gut-wrenching process for you. So, talk to me about how you see the recovery, or is this just a smaller, leaner business going forward?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said gut-wrenching, and the words that come to mind are heartbreaking. After building this business for 15 years with Kevin and Renault and thousands of Brightlings around the world, it was really the last thing that I wanted to do to make that decision. But I think what people need to realize is that companies that can make thoughtful, swift decisions and take bold actions, even in the midst of an unthinkable crisis, are the ones that are going to endure in the future. And so for us, it was about hunkering down and honing in on a simplified strategic focus. And clearly for us, that's our self sign-on business, which generates greater growth and higher profit as a channel, as well as our frequent creators, who internally we call super creators because they're really our superheroes. They're coming to Eventbrite to host many events, and we're seeing them continue that online. So we have every expectation that into the future, we'll be able to serve this segment of customers more efficiently and be able to grow our business faster. And that all culminates around this idea of us being leaner and stronger.
Now, I know you pulled your forecast for the year, but I know you're doing the modeling and the remodeling and trying to predict what's going to happen, even though there is so much uncertainty. What do you see in the second half of 2020, knowing that it might not be a V-shaped recovery and something much more abnormal?
Well, I'd go back to first the last 2 months and, our principle of being transparent and forthcoming with our shareholders. In early March, we started to see the impact of COVID, and that was a very, very quick deceleration in demand on our platform. Right after that, we started to see event cancellations and postponements start to rise. So we started to mobilize right away. And I think, suspending our business outlook was a way for us to signal that the impact was real and that it was direct. And then we went to work on helping our creators manage through this crisis, whether it was be able to, provide refunds in bulk or create in-kind donation opportunities for their fans and patrons to help support them, or launch crowdfunding campaigns for donations to help support the staff members. So as we look toward the second half of the year, I think you'll see more recovery efforts, more relief efforts. What's remarkable about Eventbrite's community is that it's really local, and so ticket buyers care a lot about these event creators and their local venues. So I think we'll continue to see that occur. And then, the recovery is not something that anyone can exactly predict. However, what we're planning for is to be able to continue to support our creators in online events, in recovery efforts, and also in creating more frequent, smaller events. And finally, when we think about safety, that's something that's going to be on the top of everyone's mind. I think that consumers will be the ones to dictate when events come back, and creators will be the one to match that voracious appetite with great content and deliver a safe experience.
So that was my next question is, when do in-person events come back? And when they do come back, how do they look different?
Well, we think that there will be guidelines that, event creators will adopt. And our position on this is that we're a platform that will provide content that's real-time, useful information, factually based, for event creators to make the right decisions about their events. We think that local community events on a more frequent basis around health and wellness classes, business seminars, networking events will be the first to start coming back. We also think that event creators will have potentially a hybrid model where they've now extended their reach to a more global audience online, and they can also host in-person events locally. And we'll be working with organizations like the Event Safety Alliance and local government groups to really dictate what we think the best guidance is for in-person commuting. But that will be something that is really important for us as we get back into real life and start connecting with one another through these events.
The average price for a ticket to an online event is $29 in the United States, but we've found tickets to Zoom nightclubs with virtual DJs for $50. Are people actually willing to pay that much? I mean, do you think that online experiences can ultimately command the same as a live in-person experience, or will there always be some sort of discount, if you will?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a discount, but I do think that there's an appreciation that an online event is not the same as an in-person event. It's a different format. It's a different medium. But what we've seen creators do is get really creative. I think their ingenuity is so inspiring. So for example, Daybreaker, which is an early morning dance community that usually happens in cities all over the US monthly and attracts thousands of people, they've pivoted to a weekly format, and they're still selling thousands of tickets. In fact, they've now hosted 7 events on Saturday morning. I recommend you join. It's like a weekly congregation. And they've transacted 17,000 paid tickets in 30 countries. So now they've expanded beyond the US to a global audience, and they've sold a fair amount of paid tickets. They're also accepting donations, which is a big part of how the creator community is keeping the lights on.
You're also on the board of the Four Seasons, and I'm curious if there's anything there that you're seeing in terms of your view on travel and tourism that's giving you sort of any clues as to what recovery or, the second half of the year looks like, given people's sort of appetite to travel despite the public health crisis and the economic devastation.
Well, I think brands like the Four Seasons in the hospitality space sit alone. I'm biased, but I think what they've built in terms of brand affinity and trust and the way that they've led with care. I know that the New York Midtown Four Seasons opened its doors to frontline workers and completely transformed the hotel to a home, essentially, for those medical workers. That gives the company a step up in terms of how they're going to bring traveling and hospitality into this new future, and what kind of measures they'll take to help travelers feel more safe when they're staying in properties around the world. I think travel will change and habits are going to evolve, but I also think that these love brands are going to be the ones that really lead the way in continuing to build consumer trust.
Interesting. So last question, in talking about, how the business changes, obviously you've laid off 45% of your staff. Do you foresee bringing some of those people back or bringing jobs back ultimately, or do you foresee sort of running the business at this level for the foreseeable future?
Look, times have changed and we have to remain lean. So there's nothing more than I want to contribute more jobs to this economy. People all around us are losing their jobs. It's heartbreaking and terrifying for so many. Right now, I'm focused along with our executive staff and our talent acquisition team on helping place our alumni Brightlings into new jobs. And that's something that we'll remain committed to indefinitely. Secondly, I'm focused on ensuring that Eventbrite can continue to endure through any scenario of recovery, any shape of letter. And that is really prudent for us as a business. So in the future, I absolutely expect us to expand our team. But for right now, we're going to stay in a much more lean shape.